All right, so welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah, always exciting to jump into a new week.
Our listeners have sent us some fascinating stuff this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Always interesting to see what people are digging into.
And this one in particular really caught my eye, an astrological forecast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, for the week of April 7th to 13th, 2025.
Okay, nice.
And this comes from Tarot by High C.
Okay, I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, you can find more from them at tarotbyhic.net.
All right, and what are they saying for this week?
Well, one thing that just jumps out right away is this idea of needing to course correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get back on track.
Yeah, like they use the terms course correction, truth, equality.
Yeah,
And it feels like there's going to be some major adjustments happening this week.
definitely. I mean, those are pretty loaded terms, right? There's a sense of something needing to be balanced or brought into alignment.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, our external circumstances or even just, our relationships and our finances, but like even how we see ourselves.
Yeah, going deeper, right? Like getting to the core of who we are and what we truly value.
Exactly. Like the illusions are fading so the truth can finally surface.
That can be a bit unsettling, can it? I mean, when those illusions start to crumble, I think a lot of people instinctively try to hold on to them.
Oh, for sure. It's comfortable, right?
Yeah, but I guess the question is comfortable for whom? Are we clinging to something that's no longer serving us? Or even worse, something that's actually holding us back?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this idea of empowerment comes in.
Mhm.
Because the forecast doesn't frame this like it's some kind of universal punishment or anything like
Like,
that.
not a cosmic spanking.
No, it's more like this is an opportunity to step into a more powerful version of ourselves.
Becoming more aware, more aligned with our truth.
Exactly. And knowing our worth.
Yeah.
And that's something they emphasize a lot. Like, this isn't about settling for crumbs in any area of our lives.
Hmm. I like that, not settling for crumbs. It speaks to that deeper need for genuine fulfillment, right? Like recognizing when we're accepting less than we deserve.
Absolutely. And to really kick off this recalibration, there are some pretty significant celestial events happening this week.
Oh, okay, let's hear it. What's going on up there in the cosmos?
Well, first of all, Mercury, the planet of communication, turns direct in Pisces on Tuesday.
Oh, so after the retrograde period, right? When it
Oh,
was
yeah.
appearing to move backwards in the sky?
Exactly. So it's been a time for, review and reflection, and now things are starting to move forward again.
Okay, so communication should be flowing a bit more smoothly now.
Yeah, exactly. Then on Saturday, we have a full moon in Libra.
Oh, full moons always feel so potent.
Yeah, it's like a culmination, a time for the things to come to a head.
And Libra is all about balance and relationships, right? So I imagine this full moon will be highlighting those themes pretty strongly.
Absolutely. It's about seeing where things are out of whack and, potentially needing to make some adjustments to restore harmony.
Interesting. Okay. And then on Sunday, Venus turns direct in Pisces, too.
Yeah, Venus governs love and values.
Yeah.
So this is a big shift in terms of, how we relate to others and what we hold dear.
It feels like there's a lot of movement happening this week, a lot of shifts and changes taking place.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a time for paying attention and, maybe being a little bit more adaptable than usual.
All right. Well, let's dive into the specifics here. Starting with Monday, what's on the agenda?
Okay, so Monday starts off with Venus retrograde conjunct Saturn.
Okay, so Venus is still retrograde at this point, meaning we're in that reflective period when it comes to love and values.
Right. And conjunct means these two planets are, right next to each other in the sky. So their energies are kind of blending together.
And Saturn is all about structure and responsibility discipline even.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is bringing a kind of serious energy to our relationships and to our finances.
I imagine it could feel a bit heavy or restrictive.
Maybe. But the forecast calls it a cosmic audit of the soul.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty significant.
It does, doesn't it?
Well,
Like the universe is saying, okay, let's take a look at the books.
time to face reality.
Exactly.
I wonder what kind of insights or revelations might come up for people during this time.
Well, they emphasize that our relationships, our finances, and our sense of self-worth are going to be, put to the test.
Tested? How?
Well, they could be restructured, maybe even stripped down to their core.
Wow, so getting to the bare bones.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
like, what are the fundamental truths underpinning these areas of our lives?
Sounds like a time for some serious introspection.
Oh, for sure. And might not be the most comfortable process because they say that if those foundations have been a bit shaky,
Yeah, cracks might start to show.
exactly. And any illusions we've been holding on to might just shatter.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, it can be tough, right? To face those hard truths about, maybe where we've been fooling ourselves.
I think we all do it to some extent, right? Tell ourselves little white lies to make things feel more palatable.
Oh, for sure. And, the forecast even says that we might feel a bit let down or jaded as we confront these realities.
Which is understandable. I mean, nobody likes to feel like they've been duped, even if it's by themselves.
Yeah, but they make a really important point that feeling that way isn't actually a sign of failure.
Okay, so it's not a bad thing.
No, it's actually a sign that our inner reality check engine is working.
I like that image, inner reality check engine. It's like our internal system for discerning what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that system needs a bit of a tune-up, you know?
Especially when we've been avoiding certain truths for a while.
Yeah, and this Venus retrograde conjunct Saturn
Mhm.
is like that cosmic mechanic coming in and saying, all right, let's see what's really going on under the hood.
So it's not about tearing things down necessarily. It's more about making sure they're built on solid ground.
Exactly.
Mm.
And if they're not, well, then this is the time to start reinforcing those foundations.
And how do we do that? What's the key to building something that can withstand these cosmic audits?
Well, they talk about soul alignment.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, it's about aligning our outer lives with our deepest values, with our authentic selves.
So not just doing what we think we should be doing or what society expects of us.
Exactly. It's about living in a way that feels truly aligned with who we are at our core.
That makes sense. And I guess when we're living in that way, we're less likely to be swayed by external pressures or illusions.
Right, because we're grounded in something deeper, something more true.
And the forecast says that if we have been building something with that kind of soul alignment, then this conjunction will actually reinforce it.
Yeah, they say it'll make it unbreakable.
Wow, so it's not all doom and gloom. There's a real positive potential here, too.
Oh, absolutely. And as we face reality, as we let go of those illusions, there's also the potential for excitement about what genuinely aligns with us.
A sense of liberation, maybe.
Yeah, and an openness to making creative changes.
So it's not just about holding on tight to what we have. It's also about being willing to let go and embrace something new.
Exactly. And they also encourage us to think about, any negative patterns we might be repeating in our relationships or with our finances.
Those habits that keep tripping us up.
Yeah, and to start thinking about how we can introduce healthier ways of connecting and managing our resources.
So it's a time for reflection, but also for action.
Right. It's about taking those insights and actually implementing them in our lives.
Okay, so that's Venus retrograde conjunct Saturn. A lot to unpack there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And on that same day, Monday, we also have Venus retrograde sextile Uranus.
Okay, now sextile is a different aspect than conjunct, right? It suggests a more harmonious flow of energy.
Right, and Uranus is the planet of, the unexpected change revolution even.
So this sounds like it might lighten the mood a little bit after that intense conjunction with Saturn.
Maybe. It definitely adds a bit of spice to the mix.
Wow.
They describe this aspect as a source of unexpected messages and unusual attraction.
So some surprises in store, maybe?
Potentially.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's really going to ramp up that desire for change.
In what areas?
Well, they specifically mention relationships, finances, and creative projects.
Okay, so across the board, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like the familiar starts to feel really stale, and there's this yearning for freedom, for something different.
That makes sense. I think we all go through phases like that where we just feel like we need to shake things up a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Mm.
And this aspect is like the universe saying, hey, here's a little nudge in that direction.
But it's not necessarily about making any rash decisions, right?
No, they caution against that. They
Yeah.
say it's more about flirting with the idea of change without, marrying
Yeah,
it.
okay, so explore those possibilities, see what feels right, but don't commit to anything just yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they also make the point that those cravings, those urges for something different can actually give us clues about what might be missing in our lives.
So those feelings aren't just random. They're trying to tell us something.
Exactly. So pay attention to those urges and ask yourself what they might be pointing to.
Okay, so it's a time for exploration, for really tuning into what we want and need.
Exactly.
And then on Tuesday, Mercury turns direct in Pisces after its retrograde period.
Yeah, so after all that, looking back and reviewing, now we can start moving forward again.
Okay, so communication should be feeling a bit more straightforward.
Yeah, we're out of the fog.
And we can start implementing those insights we gained during the retrograde period.
Exactly. But they do advise against rushing into any really important decisions just yet.
Oh, why is that?
Well, they suggest waiting until Mercury enters Aries on April 16th.
Okay, so just a few more days.
Yeah, because Aries is a much more, assertive and action-oriented sign.
So we'll have a clearer perspective then.
Exactly. And for those who are interested in a more personalized approach, they suggest looking at which astrological house in your birth chart Mercury turns direct in.
Okay, now a birth chart is like a map of the sky at the moment you were born.
Right. And is divided into 12 houses, each representing a different area of life.
Like career, relationships, home, and family.
Exactly. So depending on where Pisces falls in your chart, you can get a sense of which area of your life is likely to be most affected by this shift.
Okay, so for example, if Pisces is in your seventh house, which rules relationships, you might see some movement or changes in your partnerships.
Exactly. And there are tons of free resources online where you can calculate your birth chart and see which house corresponds to each sign.
Cool, so everyone can really personalize this information for themselves.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to Friday, we have Mars conjunct the North Node.
Now, the North Node is all about our soul's purpose, right? Like our evolutionary path.
Yeah, it's the direction we're meant to be heading in.
Yeah.
And Mars is the planet of action and energy.
So this sounds like a pretty powerful combination.
Oh, it is. They call it a cosmic push forward.
Like a rocket booster.
Exactly.
Right.
And they say that our imaginative and creative minds will be especially active.
Along with heightened intuition.
Yeah. So it's a time for big ideas and bold moves.
Sounds exciting.
And get this, they say there'll be no overthinking, no second guessing, no waiting for a better time.
Just go for it.
Exactly. The time is now.
That's a great message. I think a lot of people struggle with those doubts and that procrastination.
Oh, for sure. But this aspect is like a cosmic kick in the pants.
Not to seize the moment.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And they say that courage will be rising, fear will be dissolving, and any past resistance will just feel irrelevant.
Like all those old excuses just melt away.
Yeah, and decisions made under this influence are likely to be more instinctive, you know?
Coming from the gut rather than the head.
Exactly. So trust your intuition and don't overthink it.
Okay, so it's a time for action for following those impulses.
And it sounds like doors could open up quite unexpectedly.
In what way?
Well, they mentioned unexpected conversations, new opportunities, even situations that have felt stuck suddenly gaining momentum.
So it's like a sudden surge of energy and possibility.
Yeah, and there's this really cool idea that we might realize we don't actually need anyone's permission to act on our own inner knowing.
That's powerful.
Hmm.
You know, so many people wait for external validation or approval before they pursue their dreams.
Yeah, but this aspect is like a reminder that the power is within us.
Okay, so it's a time for stepping into our power and taking action.
Exactly. But they do mention one caveat.
What's that?
While it's a great time for those big ideas and intuitive leaps, our attention to detail might be a little weaker.
So maybe don't sign any contracts without reading the fine print.
Exactly.
Oh.
Capture those insights, but maybe double check the details later on.
Sounds like good advice. All right, so we've got action and intuition on Friday, and then on Saturday we have that full moon in Libra.
Yeah, and full moons are always a time for culmination, for things coming to a head.
And this one is being framed as a cosmic awakening.
Ooh, that sounds intense.
It is.
Yeah.
They say it forces us to see clearly where things are out of alignment in our lives.
So like a reality check?
Yeah, and it's connected back to the intentions that were set around the new moon in Aries and the solar eclipse on March 29th.
Oh, so those seeds that were planted back then are now starting to sprout.
Exactly. And they might not all be pretty little flowers.
What do you mean?
Well, they say that any imbalances, unspoken truths, or dynamics that just aren't sustainable are likely to collapse under their own weight.
Ooh. So it's a time for things to fall apart.
In a way, yes. But it's more like a necessary dismantling, so that something more authentic and aligned can be built in its place.
And Libra being the sign of balance,
Mm.
it's all about seeking harmony.
Right, but they emphasize that the balance being sought here isn't just about, sweeping things under the rug or pretending everything's fine.
No, it's about making those necessary corrections, even if they're a bit uncomfortable.
Facing those difficult truths.
Exactly. Because ultimately, that's the only way to create genuine harmony.
That makes sense. And this full moon has some pretty potent aspects attached to it, starting with a square to Mars.
Oh, yeah, square is a challenging aspect, so I imagine that's going to add some intensity.
It does. They describe it as the emergence of unfiltered emotions that can't be suppressed.
Ooh, so like a volcanic eruption.
Maybe. It's like those feelings we've been holding back or trying to ignore are suddenly going to demand our attention.
And where might those feelings be coming from?
Well, they say it could be old wounds being touched, suppressed needs finally surfacing, or just the sheer weight of emotional labor becoming too much to bear.
Wow. So a lot of potentially heavy stuff coming up.
It is, but again, it's not about punishing us. It's about bringing those things to the surface so we can finally deal with them.
Acknowledge them and hopefully heal them.
Exactly.
Then we have the full moon in Libra, opposite Chiron.
Now, Chiron is known as the wounded healer.
Yeah, representing our deepest wounds and our capacity to heal them.
And opposite means they're directly across from each other in the sky, creating a dynamic of tension, but also awareness.
So what does this opposition bring to the table?
Well, they call it a meeting of past meets present, wound meets light.
Okay, I like that. It sounds like an opportunity for integration.
It is. The full moon illuminates our current patterns and dynamics, while Chiron brings up those old identity wounds.
Particularly those related to rejection, abandonment, or just feeling unseen.
Yeah, and it can be painful to revisit those old hurts.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But they emphasize that this isn't meant to be a punishment.
Right. It's about bringing those wounds to the surface so we can finally acknowledge them and start to heal.
It's about understanding how those past experiences might still be influencing us today.
And hopefully releasing those old patterns so we can move forward in a healthier way.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the square to Mars and the opposition to Chiron. Both pretty intense aspects.
Yeah, but luckily there's also a trine to Jupiter.
Okay, trine is a harmonious aspect, and Jupiter is the planet of luck, expansion, and opportunity.
So maybe a bit of a silver lining.
Definitely. They describe this trine as a moment where a door opens for those willing to walk through it.
Ooh, I like that. An invitation to step into something new.
Exactly. And they say it's a chance to rewrite the script in certain areas of our lives.
So to create something more authentic and aligned.
Yeah, and to really embrace those opportunities for growth and expansion.
It sounds like a really positive counterbalance to those more challenging aspects.
It is like a reminder that even amidst the chaos and the intensity, there's always potential for something good to emerge.
As long as we're willing to step through that open door.
Exactly.
And then finally, this full moon is also part of a yod.
Okay, now a yod is a pretty complex astrological configuration.
It involves 3 planets forming a specific triangular pattern.
And it's often called the finger of God because it points to a specific area of life where there's a need for focus and resolution.
And in this case, the yod is pointing towards the full moon in Libra.
So balance and relationships are really being emphasized here.
Yeah, and they say that under this influence, we might become particularly aware of any tendency to act out of habit.
Or to lack objectivity in our assessments.
Yeah, and to be overly impressionable to other people's opinions.
So like our boundaries might be a bit weaker.
Maybe. And we might even feel more vulnerable or powerless in certain situations.
So it's a time to be extra mindful of those tendencies.
Exactly, and to really tune into our own needs and desires.
And to be willing to make adjustments if necessary.
Right, because the yod is essentially presenting us with a choice point.
A fork in the road.
Yeah, and we get to choose which path we want to take.
The path of staying stuck in those old patterns.
Or the path of stepping into something new and more aligned.
Sounds like a pretty important decision.
It is. And then to round out the week, Venus turns direct in Pisces on Sunday.
Ah, so after all that retrograde reflection in matters of love and values, now things are starting to move forward again.
Exactly. And they
Right.
say, this is the time to make decisions to take a stand for what we truly deserve.
In our relationships, in our finances, in our lives as a whole.
Absolutely. The internal review is over, and now it's time to act on what we've learned.
To put those insights into practice.
And they emphasize that the past no longer has to control us.
We have the power to create our own future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a really empowering way to end the week.
It is a reminder that we're not victims of our circumstances.
We have agency, we have choice.
And with Venus moving forward in Pisces, there's a sense of hopefulness and possibility when it comes to love and connection.
Yeah, it's a chance to create something truly beautiful and fulfilling.
So overall, it sounds like a week of significant shifts and adjustments.
Well, for sure. With a strong emphasis on truth, authenticity, and empowerment.
A time for course correction, for realignment.
Yeah, and for stepping into a more conscious and intentional way of being.
It's a lot to take in, but it also feels like a really powerful opportunity for growth and transformation.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, I always learn so much from these forecasts.
Me too.
Yeah,
And I'm
really.
sure our listeners will find lots to ponder and reflect on.
Definitely. And as we wrap up here, I have a final thought for you to consider.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about just one area of your life where you might have been settling for less than you deserve.
Maybe in a relationship with a friend or family member, even with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Accepting those crumbs instead of asking for the whole loaf.
And how might the energies of this week, with all its emphasis on truth and course correction, encourage you to finally seek more?
to step into your power and claim the fulfillment you truly deserve?
That's a powerful question to leave our listeners with.
It is. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep seeking, and keep diving deep.